Good evening, my friend. Come, settle in beside me. Imagine we're sitting together on a wide porch overlooking a quiet meadow. The evening air is cool and gentle against your skin. Somewhere in the distance, crickets are beginning their soft song. A lantern glows beside us, casting warm golden light across the wooden boards. I have a story for you tonight, a peaceful story, one that I hope will carry you gently towards sleep. There once was a small bookshop at the edge of a coastal town, the kind of town where everyone knew each other's names, where the bakery opened at dawn and filled the streets with the scent of fresh bread, where boats rocked gently in the harbor. The bookshop was called the Driftwood Page. It stood on a quiet corner, painted soft blue like the morning sky. In the window, old books were stacked in friendly piles. A wind chime made of sea glass hung above the door, tinkling whenever the ocean breeze passed through. The owner was a woman named Clara. She had silver hair that she wore in a long braid, and she always smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. Clara had owned the shop for 30 years. Every morning she unlocked the door at 9 o'clock, made herself a pot of chamomile tea, and waited for visitors. Can you picture her there, moving slowly between the shelves, dusting the spines of forgotten novels, humming quietly to herself? The shop wasn't busy. Some days only 2 or 3 people came in. But Clara didn't mind. She loved the quietness. She loved the way sunlight streamed through the front windows in the afternoon, making patterns on the wooden floor. She loved the sound of pages turning and the smell of books, that particular scent of paper and time. The mornings in the shop had their own gentle rhythm. Clara would unlock the door and breathe in the familiar smell of old pages and wood polish. She'd straighten the books on their shelves with patient hands. Sometimes she'd pause to read a passage from a favorite novel, her fingers tracing the words she'd read 100 times before. Outside, the town slowly awakened. Fishermen returned from early morning catches, their boats heavy with the day's work. The baker's daughter delivered fresh loaves to the cafe next door. Dogs walked their owners along the waterfront, and Clara watched it all through her shop window, content in her small corner of the world. The shop had become part of the town's heartbeat. Mothers brought their children to choose their first chapter books. Elderly gentlemen browsed the history section on rainy afternoons. Young couples searched for poetry to read to each other. Clara knew them all. She remembered what they loved, what made them smile. Do you feel the peacefulness of this place? The way time seems to slow down between these shelves?
One autumn afternoon, when the light had turned honey gold and the air smelled of salt and falling leaves, a young man wandered into the shop. His name was Thomas. He had just moved to the town to work as a carpenter, building and repairing boats down at the harbor. He was new. He didn't know many people yet. Thomas had seen the bookshop from across the street and felt drawn to it. Something about the blue paint, the cozy glow inside, made him want to step through the door. A small bell chimed as he entered. Clara looked up from behind the counter and smiled. "Good afternoon," she said warmly. "Welcome. Please look around as long as you like." Thomas nodded and began to wander through the aisles. The shelves were tall and full. Books of every color lined the walls. Poetry, history, stories of faraway places, cookbooks with handwritten notes in the margins, old atlases with maps of countries that no longer existed. He felt the quiet settle over him like a soft blanket. Outside, the world continued. Cars passed, gulls called, but in here, time moved differently, slower, kinder. Thomas let his fingers trail along the spines as he walked. Each book felt like a small promise, a door to somewhere else. He noticed the care with which everything was arranged. The books weren't just shelved, they were placed with intention. Novels about the sea near the front window where the light was best. Children's books at a height where small hands could reach them. Thick volumes of poetry in a quiet corner with a comfortable chair nearby. Thomas found himself in that corner near the back of the shop. There was a small armchair there, faded green velvet, with a reading lamp beside it. On a low table sat a wooden box filled with postcards, old postcards, their edges soft with age. He picked one up. It showed a lighthouse at sunset, the sky painted in shades of peach and violet. On the back, someone had written in careful script, "Visited here in 1962, the most peaceful place I've ever been." Thomas smiled. "Those are from travelers," Clara said, appearing beside him. She moved so quietly he hadn't heard her approach. "People who visited the shop over the years. They send postcards from wherever they go next. I keep them all." "That's beautiful," Thomas said. His voice was soft with genuine wonder. Clara's eyes sparkled. "It reminds me that stories are everywhere, that every person carries a journey inside them." She tilted her head slightly, studying him with kind curiosity. "You're new to town, aren't you?"
She offered him tea, and he accepted. They sat together in the back corner, sipping chamomile from mismatched cups. Clara told him about the town, the best place to watch the sunrise, the cafe that served cinnamon rolls on Sundays, the path along the cliffs where wildflowers grew in spring. Thomas told her about his work, about the satisfaction of shaping wood with his hands, about the smell of sawdust and varnish. He spoke of how he'd always loved making things, how wood felt alive under his tools, how each piece of timber had its own character and grain. They talked until the light outside turned golden and soft. Clara learned that Thomas had come to the town seeking quietness after years in a busy city. He'd grown tired of noise and hurry. He wanted a life where he could hear birds in the morning and see stars at night. "You'll find that here," Clara said gently. "This town has a way of welcoming people who need peace. Can you feel the warmth of that cup in your hands? The gentle friendship forming between two kind people." The afternoon stretched into early evening. Other customers came and went. A teenager looking for a book about sailing. An older woman searching for a cookbook her grandmother had owned. Clara helped each one with patience and care, then returned to sit with Thomas. He noticed how she listened, really listened, not waiting to speak, but genuinely interested in what people said. It was a rare quality. Thomas found himself sharing things he hadn't told anyone in months. His worries about starting over, his hopes for the future, his simple dream of building beautiful things in a beautiful place. Clara nodded, understanding in her eyes. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose peace, to walk away from what doesn't serve us and toward what does. Before Thomas left that evening, he borrowed a book, a collection of essays about craftsmanship. Clara wrapped it in brown paper and tied it with twine, the way she had done for 30 years. "Come back any time," she said. "The shop is always here." Thomas stepped out into the cool evening air. Behind him, the sea glass chime tinkled in the breeze. He looked back once and saw Clara through the window, already helping another customer, her face illuminated by lamplight. After that day, Thomas began visiting the bookshop often. Sometimes he'd buy a book, a guide to building furniture, a novel about the sea. Other times he'd just sit in the green armchair and read while Clara worked at the counter. They became friends. The friendship grew naturally, like ivy climbing a garden wall. Some days they'd talk for hours. Other days they'd simply exist in comfortable silence, each absorbed in their own tasks. Thomas would read while Clara cataloged new arrivals. The shop's quietness wrapped around them both. Thomas learned Clara's routines, how she always made chamomile tea at 3 o'clock, how she'd close the shop at 6, but if someone was still browsing, she'd wait patiently. How she knew exactly which book to recommend to which person, as if she could see into their hearts. One evening in late October, as the days grew shorter and the air turned crisp, Thomas arrived at the shop carrying a parcel wrapped in brown paper. "I made something for you," he said, a bit shyly. Clara unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small wooden shelf, beautifully crafted, with curved edges and a smooth finish. It was the perfect size for the front window. The wood was pale oak, sanded until it felt like silk. "For your favorite books," he explained. "The ones you want people to see first when they walk by." Clara's eyes filled with happy tears. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Thank you." She ran her fingers over the smooth wood, feeling the care in every curve and joint. They installed it together that evening, choosing which books to display. A collection of poems about the ocean, a children's story with watercolor illustrations, a cookbook of comfort foods. Each book chosen with thought, arranged with love. When they finished, they stood outside on the sidewalk, looking at the shop through the window. The lantern glowed. The new shelf looked like it had always been there. The books seemed to glow in the golden light. "It feels complete now," Clara said softly. Thomas smiled, warmth spreading through his chest. The weeks passed. Autumn deepened into winter. The town grew quieter as tourists left and locals settled into the cozy rhythm of cold months. Clara kept the shop warm with a small wood stove in the corner. The scent of burning cedar mixed with the smell of books. Thomas continued his visits. Sometimes he brought Clara gifts, a mug he'd found at the market, a sprig of rosemary from his garden, a smooth stone from the beach. Each gift was small but meaningful. Clara would smile and find the perfect place for each treasure. In return, Clara would recommend books, stories that matched his mood, adventures when he felt restless, quiet memoirs when he wanted peace. She seemed to know what he needed before he did. The books became companions during long winter evenings. The town transformed in winter. Fishing boats stayed closer to shore. Smoke rose from chimneys. People walked quickly, bundled in scarves and coats. But inside the Driftwood Page, time remained gentle and slow. On a December evening, the first snow of the season began to fall. Soft, white flakes drifted past the windows of the Driftwood Page. Inside, Clara and Thomas sat by the wood stove, watching the snow accumulate on the street outside. "I've been thinking," Clara said, after a long, comfortable silence. "I'm getting older. Someday I won't be able to run this shop anymore." Thomas looked at her, waiting. His heart suddenly felt tender. "I'd like you to have it when that time comes. I'd like to know it's in good hands, hands that understand the importance of quiet places, of stories, of kindness." Thomas felt emotion rise in his chest. "I would be honored," he said, his voice caught slightly. He hadn't expected this gift, this trust. They sat together as snow continued to fall, two friends surrounded by books and warmth and the gentle promise of continuity. Can you see the snowflakes, each one unique, drifting down through the lamplight? Can you feel the sacred quality of this moment? Outside,
The world grew quieter under its blanket of white. Inside, the fire crackled softly. Clara poured more tea. They didn't need to say anything else. Everything important had been spoken. Years passed. Clara grew older, but she was never alone. Thomas was there, learning the rhythms of the shop, memorizing which customers preferred mysteries and which loved poetry. He learned how to wrap books in brown paper and twine, how to make the perfect pot of chamomile tea. He learned the small rituals that made the shop special, how to dust the shelves without disturbing their arrangement, where the light fell best at different times of day, which floorboards creaked and which were silent. All the small details that made the Driftwood Page itself. Eventually, gently, Clara retired. She moved to a cottage nearby where she could tend a garden and watch the sea. The cottage had a blue door, the same shade as the bookshop. From her window she could see the water stretching to the horizon. Thomas took over the Driftwood Page. He kept everything just as it was: the green armchair, the box of postcards, the wooden shelf in the window. He added his own touches, too. A small workbench in the back where he'd repair damaged books. A shelf for woodworking guides. But the heart of the shop remained unchanged. And every Sunday he'd visit Clara. They'd have tea in her garden, surrounded by lavender and roses, and they'd talk about books, about the town, about the quiet contentment of a life well lived. Bees hummed in the flowers. The sea whispered in the distance. Time moved gently around them. Clara's garden flourished under her care. Herbs and flowers bloomed in careful rows. A small fountain trickled peacefully. Birds nested in the eaves. It was another kind of peace, different from the bookshop, but equally precious. The bookshop remained, a blue haven on a quiet corner, a place where time moved slowly, where kindness lived in every interaction, where stories waited patiently on shelves for someone who needed them. New visitors came, old customers returned. The sea glass chime continued to sing its gentle song. And so, my friend, our story comes to rest, like snow settling on a windowsill, like a boat finding harbor, like you settling deeper into comfort, ready for dreams. The bookshop still stands in that coastal town. Perhaps it always will. Some places are like that, timeless, necessary, held safe by the love poured into them. May you sleep peacefully tonight. May your dreams be as gentle as falling snow, as warm as firelight, as kind as old friends sharing tea. Good night, dear friend. Rest well.